This Roman coin, the denarius, was the currency of idolatry that exposed Jesus' critics for the hypocrites they were. Stay tuned and find out how. When people hear the phrase, "render to Caesar," they don't consider the biblical context from which this phrase comes. This causes confusion as well as misunderstanding about the issues of legitimate authority among Christians. How do I, as a believer in Christ, as a follower of Christ, respond to the government? But the encounter that Jesus had with these religious authorities that prompted this phrase, "render to Caesar," tells another story that is often misunderstood by many Bible readers. Luke tells us of this encounter in Luke chapter 20. He writes, "So they asked him, 'Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not?'" Well, what is going on in this encounter with the scribes and the chief priest? Well, remember, Jesus had just entered into Jerusalem to the great fanfare of the people. They were cheering him as they came in. And this caused this prestigious group to really despise him. And they were very, very much concerned because their popularity, together with their authority, was waning. So this encounter regarding Caesar's tax, is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not, dealt with a theme of greater authority. That is the authority of heaven as opposed to the authority of earth. They were attempting to trap Jesus, for if Jesus said no, he would be in trouble with the Roman authorities, because what he would be doing would be encouraging tax evasion, which would be treason against Rome. But if he said yes, well, he would certainly lose the support of most of the crowds, because they viewed Jesus as a Messiah that was finally going to free them from Roman occupation. Either way, no matter what Jesus said, the scribes and the chief priests would win. So they ask with a sense of superiority, "Jesus, come on, Jesus, step up to the microphone and give us your answer. Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar?" This word tribute is a word translated tax in many translations, and it's not a tax in general. You need to understand it is a poll tax or a head tax, which was based on the census of the people and had to be paid on all persons, including women and slaves. And by law, it was to be paid by Roman coinage. So Jesus, seeing through their trickery, responds this way, "Show me a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have?" They said, "Caesar's." At this point, these scribes and chief priests, they probably had some idea that they were in hot water and the water was about to get hotter. Jesus asked about the likeness on the coin. That word likeness is the Greek word icon, which is a very specific term. It is a technical term, and it had a very specific place in Old Testament theology. You remember the second commandment in Exodus. It reads, "You shall not make yourselves a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." When Jesus asked them, "Whose likeness and inscription does this coin have?" these religious elites were forced to declare out loud, "Tiberius Caesar, august son of the august God." And if that weren't bad enough, on the flip side of the coin, it read, "High Priest." These religious authorities were in possession of a coin that was openly declaring that Caesar is the Son of God, the High Priest. Caesar is divine, and he speaks for God. But the matter for the scribes and the chief priests is only going to get worse. When they confronted Jesus, they were in the temple where Jesus had been teaching. They had produced this coin with the likeness and inscription in the temple, meaning they had brought this idolatrous coin inside the temple. Now keep in mind that Jews carried around Roman coinage every day, but they were forbidden to bring these coins into the temple for obvious reasons. That is why there were money changers at the temple. They exchanged Roman coinage for special silver coins that were acceptable to pay the temple tax. Now, these money changers had a monopoly on this exchange, and with any monopoly, you can assume that they were charging high exchange rates, and as a result, they were extorting the people, which is one of the reasons why, when Jesus cleaned out the temple, he called them robbers and thieves. They were profiting handsomely through extortion. But the real issue at hand was the open idolatry of the religious elite, these scribes and chief priests. They possessed a coin inside the temple that declared that Caesar is the Son of God and that he is the high priest. They were exposed. Their charade was over. But Jesus was not finished. His final request would seal the deal. He said to them, "Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God the things that are God's." The entire Jewish population had submitted to the use of these idolatrous Roman coins. Roman currency was the basis of their commerce. They had accepted the benefit of Caesar's rule and legitimized that rule by using Roman coinage. Keep in mind, the coining of money is power, a symbol of power, and the acceptance of that money by the people as common currency is evidence of their submission to that power. Is it lawful? Asked the scribes and chief priests of Jesus. Jesus would come back to them going, "Why are you asking? You're already using the coinage every day, and as such, you've made it lawful. So render," he said, "unto Caesar what is already Caesar's." Note the word render. The scribes and chief priests, when they initially asked Jesus, they had simply used the word give. That is, give back or give tribute to Caesar. But Jesus used a compound form of that word, which literally means to give back or to pay up. That is, it means to pay what is due someone, to pay what already belongs to them, to give back what is already theirs because they already own it. You're not returning it, it's already theirs. Caesar owned the coin in question, and they were using that coin to their own benefit. They profited by means of that coin, so they had no right to refuse the tax. They enjoyed the order that the Roman Empire brought, and as such, they had carried that coin right into the temple, despite the likeness and inscription on it. And Jesus told them then to render or pay up or give back to Caesar what is already Caesar's. And then Jesus said, "Render to God what is God's." Now keep in mind, he was not drawing a line between the two, as if they both had equal authority. That is, the state has earthly authority, and God has heavenly authority. That is not what is going on here. Jesus was pointing out a hierarchy. He had already drawn attention to the likeness and inscription on the coin, which is overtly theological. Caesar is the Son of God and the high priest. The scribes and the chief priests knew the second commandment regarding graven images. They knew that they were not to make any graven images. They knew that man as a whole was not to make graven images because no one or thing is God. In contrast, it is God who puts his image on man. God created man in his image according to his likeness, and as such, these scribes and chief priests needed to give back to God what was already God's. Jesus made it clear that these religious elites and the people at large were already rendering to Caesar what was Caesar's. Would they now render to God what is God's? It was a wake-up call for everyone who was listening. Hey, listen, thanks so much for joining me today. And as I always like to say, hit that like button. And if you've not yet subscribed, push that subscription button as well. Would love for you to come along and join all the rest of us as we see what God has for us in His Word. And again, as always, God's very best to you.